Hello everyone and welcome back or welcome to the channel. And welcome to the first part to What If Itadori Had the Rinnegan. Now real quick shout out to my good friend Aiden, as he is the one that recommended I revive my channel, and he is also the one who recommended I do this What If. Me and him also extensively talked about how the Rinnegan would function in the JJK verse, so shout out to him for that as well. Also really quick, I need to go over this about how I kind of just ended my channel. I'm completely restarting my channel. I'm going to have a fresh start where I try to be consistent with my upload schedule. Also, with this restart, every what if I have done in the past will never be continued, unfortunately. I know that might be sad or frustrating for some of you to hear, and I do apologize. It's just that I do not have the ambition, or I just don't have the drive to do those what ifs anymore. So from now on, forget anything I've ever done in the past. Think of me as a completely and utterly new channel. But of course, if you do have recommendations for what ifs, you can go tell me in my Discord, which is linked down below. With all of that out of the way though, let's get into this. Yuji Itadori would be born pretty normally, but there was just one thing off with him, and that was his eyes. His eyes were completely purple, he would have black pupils, and he would have this strange circular pattern going all the way up to his pupil. As Yuji was held by his mother, she would smile almost maniacally as her eyes met his. But the day Yuji Itadori was born, the world's energy would shift yet again, just like with Gojo, as a new powerhouse had stepped foot on Earth. But Yuji was not born into any special family dealing with sorcery, so he wasn't really known of. But many people throughout the world could feel the shift in power. Some time would pass, and Yuji would now be in high school. And his character would be a little different from canon, as Yuji with the Rinnegan had hypersensitivity to emotions, cursed energy, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And because of this hypersensitivity, he could sense a lot of stuff everywhere. He could sense when people would die to cursed spirits, he could sense when people would die in general. He knew when people were sad, he knew when people were happy, and it really took a toll on Yuji since he could sense this ever since he was a young child. So this kind of scarred Yuji and made his entire way of thinking and acting change. Yuji would also sometimes wear sunglasses to hide his Rinnegan, as they were seen as unnatural, and he would sometimes be made fun of how his eyes looked. And usually when he was made fun of, he would lash out with anger. But over time, as he got older, he learned how to control himself much better. And speaking of controlling, due to him having the Rinnegan from birth and it being an innate ability, Yuji would have a firm grasp on how cursed energy functioned and how it worked. He had no name for it, but he knew how it worked to an extent. Also, the abilities of the Rinnegan were pretty much carved into him from birth. He knew how the Rinnegan worked, he just never used it at all. And with the slight instances where he did use it, it was very frightening to him, so he stayed away from it. That is until he got a little bit older and he began to understand that he could use his abilities to help people, but they were very unnatural and not even human. And Yuji in this what if would still be pretty much superhuman. In fact, he'd be even stronger since the Rinnegan does provide amps to your strength, speed, and whatnot. And because of Yuji's huge character change, he would not join any clubs at school and he wouldn't have any friends. But Yuji's two friends from the original, I forgot their name, I do apologize. But they're the two that are in the spiritual club that studies haunted stuff and whatnot. They would find and take Sukuna's finger, and Megami would still go to the high school to check up on the special grade cursed object, aka Sukuna's finger. Yuji would go to the hospital after school to check up on his grandpa, and this is where things kinda go toward canon. His grandpa gives him the same speech as in canon before passing away. And much like in canon, Yuji isn't really affected by this, as from his childhood he knows unfortunate things happen every day. And this is just one of those unfortunate things. He's kind of desensitized to heartaches and death. But unlike in canon, Megami would stay at the school and he would continue to investigate and look around. Right as nightfall came, though, he would begin to leave, but he would hear a girl scream, so he would turn around and run back into the school building. As just like in canon, Yuji's canon friends would in fact unravel Sukuna's finger, which would cause many cursed spirits to show up. But as this was happening, Yuji would be walking home and he would be walking past the school, as Yuji with his Rinnegan could feel something terrible happening inside. as he would remember his grandfather's words, "Save as many people as you can." But back inside the school, Megami using his demon dogs was actually able to kill one of the cursed spirits and save the two who unraveled Sukuna's finger. He would retrieve the finger before being attacked by an even stronger cursed spirit. It would slam him outside onto the concrete walkway. Megami would take a stance as he was ready to use his trump card, as that was the only way he could possibly maybe survive this. As then Megami would feel a hand on his shoulder. As he would turn around to see Yuji. Yuji would remove his sunglasses as he would tell Megami whatever he was about to do he probably shouldn't. As Yuji could see the build-up and manipulation of cursed energy. Megami would question why Itadori was there and who he was, as then he would see Yuji's eyes, and he knew he saw those eyes somewhere before. He saw them in a book that dated back to the Heian era. As just then the cursed spirit would begin to rush toward Yuji and Megami. Right as it was about to get close enough to swing at them, Yuji would put his hand up, as the cursed spirit would be hit point blank with a very powerful almighty push, and it would be ripped to pieces, killing it instantly. Yuji would help Megami up as he would introduce himself, as around this time Gojo would show up. Gojo would lift his blindfold up as his six eyes would meet Yuji's Rinnegan for the first time. The three would begin to converse with each other, as it was then found out that Yuji was not a sorcerer whatsoever. He was just a regular person. This is when Yuji would be invited to Jujutsu Tech to become a first year. Gojo would explain someone with those eyes and those abilities could not stay a normal person. Yuji didn't really know what he meant by that. Gojo would explain to Yuji that he would be able to kill cursed spirits and help people. Yuji would accept this invitation to Jujutsu Tech. And yes, if you were wondering, Yuji will not be eating Sukuna's fingers. It really holds no purpose in this what if. It would just make things more complicated than they have to be. Yuji would go home to pack as Megami would question Gojo about what was up with that guy's eyes and what was so special about him, besides the fact he just one-shotted a curse despite not being a sorcerer. Gojo would explain that what he had was the Rinnegan. It's like his six eyes, but it's much more powerful. He would explain the last known user of the Rinnegan dates back to the Heian era, and the user of the Rinnegan has access to 6 abilities. And since the Rinnegan is an innate ability that is only obtained at birth, the 6 abilities that it provides cannot be classified as a curse technique, meaning Yuji Itadori still has potential to awaken his own curse technique along with his already 6 abilities. Gojo would explain the first ability of the Rinnegan is complete gravity manipulation. Along with this, he can pull and push with immense force. He can even create small black holes that absorb everything to them. The second ability allows him to absorb cursed energy, meaning anything created by cursed energy can be absorbed and negated by the Rinnegan. The third ability allows him to mechanize his body. Gojo would explain that this ability is similar to Mechamaru's. He can give himself boosters or blasters or extra armor. His fourth ability allows him to summon giant, unkillable Shikigami. His fourth ability is complete soul manipulation. He can take people's souls and the information that they hold within their brains. He can split people's souls up and put them into bodies, and he can split his own soul up. And his final ability is control over death and injury. He can bring people's souls back, and he can also heal any injury. Gojo would then explain to Megami that the Rinnegan also allowed people to see the build-up and manipulation of cursed energy even if it's invisible. It also gives the user hypersensitivity to cursed energy and people's emotions. It also gives them hyper-perception. Megami would be blown away as he would question Gojo if he was even being serious. Gojo would laugh and he would say of course he was, as then he would say, "Give that kid a couple months, he might even give me a run for my title as the strongest." The next day, after Yuji got his grandpa cremated much like in canon, Gojo would show up. Gojo would ask Yuji if he knew how to use those eyes. Yuji would explain that he's been knowing how to use them ever since he could remember. In fact, it was almost second nature. Gojo would then ask, "So you know how to move souls?" Yuji would ask what he meant by that, as he was aware he could take people's souls, but he did not know that he could move them. Gojo would then explain that Yuji had the ability to cast people's souls into the King of Hell.
He could also split people's souls up and put them in different bodies. And the same thing applied for his own soul. After a second, Yuji would now understand, and he would say, "I guess I could do that." Gojo would smile, as then he would reach into his pocket and he would pull something out. It would be Sukuna's finger. Gojo would then explain to Yuji that there was a soul inhabiting this finger along with 19 others. They once belonged to Sukuna, the king of curses, the most powerful being to ever exist besides himself. Gojo would then explain that Sukuna had his soul split up 20 ways into all 20 of his fingers. And the fingers were spread out through Japan, and they were still being hunted down to this day. Gojo would also explain if one of these fingers got into the wrong hands, or if someone ate them, it could lead to Sukuna being revived. Gojo would then explain that these fingers were completely indestructible. No jujutsu or no curse technique could destroy them. As then Gojo would explain that this is where Yuji came into play, as he had the Rinnegan and he could move souls. And he can move Sukuna's soul from the finger into the King of Hell, where it will be trapped forever. Meaning Yuji was the only person in the entire world who could get rid of Sukuna permanently. Yuji would tell Gojo that he would give it a try, as Gojo would pass Yuji the finger. Yuji would summon the King of Hell as it would rise from the ground, and it would open its mouth as purple flames would engulf the inside of its mouth. Yuji would then grab a firm grasp of the finger as he would begin to pull. As a dark aura would rise from the finger, it would be Sukuna's soul. But just then, Yuji would drop down to one knee. As along with taking someone's soul, you also take every piece of their mind. As now Yuji would be enduring all of Sukuna's memories and everything he had ever done. And it was awful. Yuji would grind his teeth together as he would rip the remaining bits of the soul out of the finger, and he would cast it into the King of Hell. As then the finger would begin to disintegrate as it no longer had a soul to inhabit it. The King of Hell would be unsummoned as Yuji would slowly stand up as he was still shaking. Gojo would ask Yuji if he was alright, as Yuji wouldn't mutter a word. Yuji would then look up at Gojo as a small droplet of blood was leaking from Yuji's Rinnegan. And this is not from overusage of the Rinnegan or fatigue or anything, this is just because Yuji is in intense mental pain and physical pain after intaking all of Sukuna's memories. As then Yuji, in the most serious tone he could muster, would say that he could never let a monster like that walk on the face of the earth again. As from now on, Yuji was devoted to getting rid of the remaining bits of Sukuna's soul. Gojo would then ask Yuji if he could do that again. Yuji would say he shouldn't have a problem doing it again since he had already taken in all of Sukuna's memories. Gojo would then take out another one of Sukuna's fingers as he would toss it over to Yuji, and without effort Yuji would take the soul and cast it into the King of Hell. 2 down, 18 to go. After this, Megumi, Gojo, and Yuji would all head back to Jujutsu Tech. Gojo and Yuji would be going to meet the principal to get Yuji permitted as a first year. Once they got there, much like in canon, the principal would question Yuji on why he wanted to be a sorcerer. And Yuji would kind of give him the same response that he did in canon. He did not want to live a normal life while still knowing he could have prevented so much pain by becoming a sorcerer. The principal would accept Yuji's answer as he would permit him to become a first year. The next day, Yuji, Gojo, and Megumi would all meet up as they had to go to the train station and pick up the next and final first year, Nobara. They would get to the train station as they would find Nobara harassing some salesman. And this whole little encounter with her, Yuji, Megumi, and Gojo wouldn't really change all that much. And she wouldn't find Yuji dumb in this what if, she would in fact just find him kind of boring, and she would also wonder why he was wearing sunglasses. But she would introduce herself as then Gojo would tell the three that they were going to Tokyo. And much like in canon, Nobara would get excited at this as since she is from the countryside, she has never been to Tokyo. But unlike in canon, Yuji would not, as he does not care. As they would take a train to Tokyo and arrive at their location, Nobara would be down, as they were in fact in Tokyo, but they were not sightseeing or going to any restaurants. Instead, they were standing in front of some rundown building that had an eerie feeling to it, and it was right next to a graveyard. Gojo would explain that this was a test for Yuji and Nobara since they were new first years. They needed to go in there and exorcise every cursed spirit. Nobara would be complaining to Gojo since he got her hopes up about going to Tokyo, but while she was doing this, Yuji was already heading inside. He would then be followed by Nobara. She would tell Yuji that she was going up top to search as she would start heading up the stairs, but Yuji would stop her and he would tell her to be careful as there was more than one up top. She would wonder how Yuji knew that, but she would continue heading up top. As right after this, a cursed spirit would drop down ready to attack Yuji. Yuji already knew this was going to happen, so he would summon a still rod, which in the Naruto verse it's called a chakra rod, but in this verse I'm just going to call it a still rod because I don't want to call it a cursed energy rod. But he would summon a still rod and he would coat it in cursed energy and he would stab the cursed spirit in the head, one tapping it and killing it. And up top with Nobara, this would pretty much go toward canon. She would kill the cursed spirit that was a mannequin and she would find the boy, but as she turned away, the boy would be captured, forcing her to surrender. But right as this would happen, Yuji, much like in canon, would bust through the wall, as he would use universal pull to pull the boy away from the cursed spirit. As then, in one quick motion, Yuji would rip the cursed spirit's head off with little effort. The cursed spirit's head and body would disintegrate as Yuji's Rinnegan would peek over his sunglasses as he would stare blankly at Nobara. He would then say, "I told you to be careful, you nearly got yourself and this kid killed." She would kinda still be in shock at everything that just happened, but she would snap out of it and she would begin to yell at Yuji. She would be talking about how she couldn't do anything since it had a hostage, but by this time Yuji was already leaving the building with the kid. A few days would pass and Gojo would have to leave out on some business, leaving Megumi, Yuji, and Nobara. And they would be sent out on a mission. And this mission was strictly to gather information. It was not about exorcising any cursed spirits, it was information gathering only. Once the three arrived on scene, they would be told that this was a juvenile correction center, and there was a reported case of a potential special grade. And the three's mission was to enter and get as much information about what was going on as possible and get out. If they ran into anything grade 1 or higher, they should not fight it, they should simply get out. Yuji would take off his sunglasses as he would take one good look at the building and he would say everyone in there was dead. And there was in fact a special grade inside. And that special grade was in possession of something he needed. It would begin to rain as Yuji would tell Megumi and Nobara that he would be back in 5. They would both try to stop him, but before they could, he was already gone. As then Ichiji, and if you don't know who Ichiji is, he's basically the guy with the glasses who was giving them a rundown of everything that was going on. But like I was saying, Ichiji would ask Megumi what they were going to do. Megumi would then tell them both that Gojo had faith and confidence in Itadori's power and ability. Going in there was suicide and they would be ineffective against a special grade. All they could do at this point was cross their fingers and hope that Gojo was right. So Ichiji would put up a veil as the three would stand outside waiting. But inside of the building, Yuji would be walking around, as he would be searching for the special grade and he was coming up on it. He would then find himself in a big open room where he saw nothing but 3 dead bodies. As then suddenly, Yuji would feel something quickly approaching him. He would turn around and step back as he would dodge a swipe from the special grade. Yuji would then throw a punch at the special grade, and right before impact, he would enhance it with cursed energy, and he would perform a black flash unintentionally. The black flash would connect with the special grade's face, and it would actually blow its jaw off and send it flying back. The special grade would slowly get up as it would regenerate its lower half of its jaw. Yuji would stare down at his fist as he was starting to get the rhythm of how he could use cursed energy. The special grade would then shoot a blast of pure cursed energy at Yuji. But Yuji, with his largely enhanced perception, would see this coming instantly and he would put his hand up as he would completely absorb the blast of cursed energy. The special grade would continue spamming cursed energy blast, but this would have no effect as Yuji would simply absorb them. Yuji would then quickly use Almighty Push as he would blow away half of the room, including the cursed spirit. And Yuji wanted to end this fight relatively fast as he did not want to continue fighting something this annoying. So Yuji would quickly turn his arm into a blaster as he would fire it at the special grade. It would hit the special grade and it would blow it to pieces instantly, killing it. And also really quick, anything that fights Yuji probably will not survive very long as the Rinnegan is very busted if you kind of like fit it in the Jujutsu Kaisen world. So Yuji can realistically end the fights off in like 1 or 2 moves. So don't really expect any long drawn out, well choreographed fights because that's just simply not the case. But Yuji would walk over to the remains of the special grade as he would reach down and he would pull out one of Sukuna's fingers. As that is the only reason he even came inside and fought and killed the special grade was for Sukuna's finger. But you know the routine, he would then summon the King of Hell and he would exorcise Sukuna's soul from the finger. As then he would make his way outside and he would meet back up with everyone. Eventually news would get around to Gojo and other Jujutsu sorcerers that the first year, Yuji Itadori had exercised a special grade in his first week as a sorcerer. And they would obviously know about his special eyes as well. But much like in canon, the disaster curses and Kenjaku would all have a meeting. And this meeting would mostly be about how they would have to seal Gojo in order to beat him, and they would have to tempt Yuji Itadori onto their side. As with him, nothing can stand in their way, even Gojo. But much like in canon, Jogo is very confident in his abilities, so he thinks he can fight Gojo and win. But back at Jujutsu Tech, things would kind of go toward canon. The first years would meet the second years. Except something's a little different here. Yuji is actually around for this, unlike in canon. So Yuji would actually meet Maki, Panda, and Inomaki.
And much like in canon, Maki would ask the three to join the exchange event as the third years got themselves suspended and Yuta wasn't around.
They would be told that they were going up against the second and third years of Kyoto, and that they would train them up and get them prepared to fight second and third years. Nobara would be ecstatic and she would immediately accept this as she thought she was going to get to go to Kyoto.
Megami decided to join because he didn't see a reason why not, and also this was a perfect chance for him to get stronger since he saw how Yuji handled a special grade with zero effort, and he did not want to be left behind in terms of strength. Yuji, on the other hand, would very bluntly decline Maki's offer, as he would say he had much better things to do than mess around with the guys from Kyoto. Maki would be a little agitated, and Panda would be disappointed, because from what they've heard about Yuji, with his help they could probably level the playing field with the third and second years, despite their inferior numbers. But as this was happening, Gojo would show up in a joyful mood as always, and he would tell Yuji that he should take part in the exchange event, that it would be fun. Yuji would look at Gojo as he was very visibly annoyed, but Gojo would say if he was going to train for the exchange event, he was not going to be training with Maki, he was going to be training with him. Gojo would explain to him that if he trained with Maki, he probably wouldn't get anywhere because he was a very unique sorcerer. In fact, he was a lot like himself. If he wanted to get strong fast, he would have to train with the strongest. Maki's ego would be a little hurt after hearing this, but she would shrug it off as long as he was participating on their side, it was all fine. Later that day, Gojo and Yuji would begin their training almost immediately, as Gojo had things to tend to and he did not have much time to train Yuji before the exchange event actually began. First off, Gojo would explain to Yuji that Yuji had an incredible ability and he had the abilities to contend with any sorcerer or curse spirit to ever live, even Sukuna. And even himself. The only thing that Yuji really lacked was knowledge and experience and physicality. And those are all things that Gojo could teach and give Yuji. In fact, he could teach Yuji all of these things with one basic exercise, sparring. Yuji would be a little hesitant as he knew Gojo was the strongest and he knew no one wanted to fight him for a reason. But Gojo would make it clear that this was nothing more than a training exercise and he was not going to take it seriously. As then he would tell Yuji to try to land a blow on him. He would tell him that he could use cursed energy if he wanted because he already knew Yuji knew how to use it. Gojo would stand confidently with his hands in his pockets as he didn't expect Yuji to get past his infinity. But he was going to teach Yuji how to use his Rinnegan ability in order to get past it. But unfortunately for Gojo, he was sadly mistaken, as within an instant Yuji was gone and he was throwing a punch at Gojo's chest. Gojo caught this because Yuji's speed isn't anything crazy, it's not too bad for Gojo to keep up with. As the punch got closer to his chest, he would begin to realize that his infinity was caving in on itself, it was being absorbed and negated. As then he would feel a slight spike of cursed energy and he knew what was coming. He would quickly remove his hands from his pockets as he would grab Yuji's fist and he would push him away, as Gojo saved himself from being hit with a black flash. Gojo would be frightened but also amazed at the same time that Yuji was able to perform the Black Flash at will, and also he could absorb cursed energy that easily. Gojo would realize that he might actually have to take this a little serious, As the two would continue to spar for the next couple of days, Gojo would realize that Yuji's hand-to-hand was very advanced. In fact, it was so advanced that he would sometimes have to get serious in order to beat Yuji in a hand-to-hand fight. Gojo would question Yuji on this, and Yuji would explain that he in fact inherited all of Sukuna's combat experience once he took his soul. And along with this, he would inherit all the information that Sukuna had, so he knew all about the 6 Eyes, and he also knew about the 12 Shadows, which Megumi had. Now that Yuji did not need any combat experience, all he needed was basic knowledge on the Jujutsu world, and also more experience with his abilities and how to use them in certain situations. Also, Gojo would realize something very strange over the span of a couple of days, and that was Yuji's speed, strength, reflexes, and durability. All of his physical attributes seemingly started to raise. Just by sparring a little bit with Gojo, Yuji was getting leagues stronger physically. And this did not make any sense in the slightest. This does not just normally happen with a human. But about 2 weeks would pass, and Gojo had taught Yuji everything that he knew. And I mean everything. And they had even practiced some of these things that he was talking about. And Yuji would learn a lot about his Rinnegan abilities and how to use them perfectly. Also, while Yuji and Gojo are sparring now, Yuji would actually press Gojo to almost being serious, if not that, then actually being serious. Gojo could no longer afford to hold back on Yuji since he was so much stronger and faster. Gojo even felt a sense of joy since he got to fight someone who wasn't completely and utterly weak. He finally got to fight someone who was on his level. So it's pretty safe to say that Yuji would get exponentially stronger within these 2 weeks. But at this 2-week mark, Gojo would actually have to leave the school as he would have to go meet someone. But on his way there, he would ask the car to be stopped as he would get out, and he would wait, as then he would be attacked by Jogo. And this fight would go exactly toward Canon. Jogo would get his ass whooped. And also, much like in Canon, Gojo would teleport back to the school and get Yuji, and then teleport back. As he would let Yuji down, Jogo would be getting back up as he would see Yuji. Gojo would explain to Yuji that this was a great learning experience and he wanted him to kill Jogo. Jogo, hearing this, would obviously get pissed off since he was under the impression that he was strong and he could beat Gojo. But instead he's being used as some testing dummy and some kid can apparently kill him, he's so weak. Jogo would obviously be extremely frustrated and angry, much like in the anime and manga, and he would literally explode with anger. As fire and magma shot everywhere, Gojo would watch on as Yuji prepared to fight Jogo. And that is where I will be ending the first part to What If Itadori Had the Rinnegan. Now, guys, I wanted to make this video 40 minutes long and I wanted to, get done with it in one part, maybe make a movie. But I could not. The pacing of this What If, the pacing in which I was recording this was so awful. I just straight up could not find the motivation to record like a 40-minute video, so I'm cutting this down to 30 to 20 minutes. I hope you guys enjoyed, and leave your thoughts below. Tell me what you think will happen next. Obviously, the Discord is linked down below. You can go join that if you would like. You could talk to me personally, recommend me what ifs, and all that. But yeah, like I said, I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I apologize for kind of discontinuing my channel, and also I apologize for this coming out late. I will likely finish this What If within like 2 to 3 parts, and with all that said, I will catch you guys in the next What If. Bye.